Today's MicroMoment is a follow-up from last week's MicroMoment on canning lids. There were so many good questions and comments, and it got me to thinking, and I tried a few experiments on different things and want to answer a couple of questions. So this will be just a real quick overview of some things that I've learned and that I'd like to pass on to you. First of all, I want to talk about the role of a sealing compound or a gasket, exactly what that does, because from reading the comments, I think there's a little misconception about that. The compound, the sealing compound that's found on the inside of the lids or with a sealing gasket, and this is the one from Tatler, its role is to create a cushion between the lid and the jar such that air cannot get through. This is a Weck 1 liter jar, and if we were to try to seal food glass on glass, we all know that that wouldn't work. Air could get in through there. And so here's the science behind that. During the heating of the food in a jar, the food shrinks down, steam is produced, steam comes out, in the case of Weck jars, underneath the gasket, and then it is replaced, the air is driven out and it is replaced by steam. When it begins to cool, the food then shrinks back down. The air is gone. It has created a vacuum. A vacuum is a force. Simple explanation is that a force is a push or a pull. And in the case of a vacuum, it is a pull. The force of this vacuum pulls against everything, including this lid. And so when a gasket is sandwiched between the two glass objects and that vacuum force pulls down, it pushes the lid right down into the gasket, and the jar then comes up into the gasket, forming an airtight seal. And the same thing happens with Tatler lids when the gasket is in place, same thing, and with the sealing compound here. So that's how that works. Now, one of our viewers asked, could you show us how to open a Weck jar? Because how do you know if it's sealed? And then when you open it, how do you know if it is still safe? All right, so the way that you know that a Weck jar is sealed is you just pick it up by the lid. If it is not sealed, the jar won't come with it. And so this is very sealed. That gasket is very powerful. The force, the vacuum is very powerful, pulling it into the gasket. Now, because there is a lack of air inside any jar of canned goods, the minute that we break that seal, we usually hear a psh as the air rushes back in. Well, does that happen with Weck? And this person wanted to know, does the food jump when you put the air back in? Because sometimes it does when you get the air back in. So I'm going to show you how to do it, and we will look closely to see if the food jumps. So in order to break the seal, you just pull on this little tab. And boy, I'll tell you, sometimes it is difficult. So I'm going to pull. Okay, so you heard the seal break. I don't know if the food jumped. Jim, do you notice it? Could you tell? I didn't. And so there it is. And food is just fine. And this gasket, because it is not deformed at all or stretched out of position, is good to use again. Now, we're just going to have this for lunch, so I'm going to set it aside. All right, the next thing I want to report on is I have used the Pure jars, P-U-R, Pure. These were from Ace Hardware. I think Ace Hardware is a national chain. Several people commented that they had also bought Pure jars and Pure lids. And the comment was, yes, but they're made in China. Well, frankly, I don't care where they're made, if they're good quality and if they work. The Pure lids, some people had bought Pure lids as well, just separate from the jars. And this is one of our pints of green beans that I'm doing on the Nesco canner testing. And all of the Pure jars and lids that I have used have sealed beautifully. So I will ask Jim to get some more of these Pure jars for us because I trust those. Okay, now Here is a really fun hack. And I'll tell you, I have to thank Sandy from our Facebook page, who sent me a message and said, my friend Lori and I took one of the lids, one of the flats that we have, and we just scraped off all of the sealing compound, and we put in place the gasket from a Tattler lid, and then used that for canning. And she says it works. Do you mind testing that? Well, I thought, oh my goodness, that is really kind of neat. And so, because I know how gaskets work, I realized that you don't need to scrape this off, because the force of the vacuum is going to pull it down anyway. There's nothing sticky about this. These don't stick to jars. It is the force of the vacuum that is pulling those down. And so I ran a little experiment, and we're going to open the experiment right now. These 4 jars of water, I pressure canned for 20 minutes. And this is what I did. I used one of my old flats, and I have hundreds of these, and I used one of these gaskets and put it on the jar just like this with a band. You see all the bands here, and every single one of them sealed. And I used a Kerr lid, a ball lid, and then I used 2 off-brands of lids. This one was under the Ball label, but I have my doubts. And this one was just a brand that I don't even remember what it was. So these are all sealed just fine. So, and they were, again, I did not remove the sealing compound. I just put the gasket right on the top of it. So let's open these. All right, it was still sealed. Boy, that gasket is really pushed up in there. But there it is, and let's compare it with, it has not stretched out of shape. It is still good. And so this works really well for me. Now, it won't work well for everyone, but it works well for me because I have hundreds of these flats that I've just been saving for who knows what. And so I can use these, and if you buy just the gaskets, I have ordered a bag of 100 of just these, 33 cents a piece. So this is a very cheap hack for using what I have with a 33-cent gasket that is reusable, that I can now pressure can. So we're going to open all of these. Yep, the seal was still good, and gasket is up in there. I just wanted to be sure that it would not ruin these gaskets, and it didn't. This is the Kerr. I never know how to say that. Again, the gasket is just fine, and I could reuse these too if I want to. And then the last one, I had a couple of this brand that did not seal. And it did. It just did fine. So, Sandy and Lori, thank you. This is absolutely a great hack. So I'll keep you posted as I learn new information. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you at our next Micro Moment.